and welcome back to another edition of the SBK Betting Podcast, where the men alongside me, thankfully, not myself, but every other person on this team managed to get a winning nap in last week. So we're returning in flying form, and pleasingly, Ross and James with Hilts in what was a fabulous race last weekend. They were winners at 3-1, and that was a good result, despite TC putting up the horse opposing them. But we like to see a nap like Hilts coming in through, but and TC would have been delighted to see third round absolutely bolt up at 3-1. So we had a good weekend last weekend. We're coming into one of, if not the busiest Saturdays that I have seen in a long time. 10 meetings across the UK and Ireland on Saturday, 8 in the UK. And so there's plenty for us to choose from. And although there is a lot of meetings, there is no standout race, but we're going to pick out essentially the best of the action at Haydock and the best 2-year-old race on the meeting on at Beverley a little later on. But we'll start with Haydock with the 145, the Achilles Stakes, run over 5 furlongs. It is a listed race, which I didn't think this time last year I would see Dragon Symbol appear in. Based on his earlier form, he's rated a lot higher than a lot of these. He's got a rating of 112, which is £7 clear of the rest, and he's 9-4 favourite because of that. Clarendon House 6-1, Tab Deed is 15-2, Atlas Bay 8-1, Ainsdale 7-1, 10-1. Bigger the rest. As I say, Dragon Symbol, base ability he's shown at the top end of last season. He should be capable of this listed race. TC, I'll bring you in first. What's going on with him? Did he blow up last time when he need that first run with Roger Varian? Can he bounce back from essentially being a little bit keen, I thought, early on at York?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Obviously, Dragon Symbol last year proved that he was a proper Group 1 sprinter. We saw him compete in the likes of Commonwealth Cup, July Cup, and he was bang there in the firing line in both of those races and in further Group 1s later in the year. Now, his last 2 efforts have been slightly disappointing. He finished 14th at Ascot on Champions Day, albeit the ground had gone for him then. And then on his comeback, I thought he showed good early speed, completely flattened out and blew out in the closing stages. Now, maybe he needed the run that day. Interesting, he's moved to Roger Varian. Great trainer, but unproven with sprinters, we should say. Moved from Archie Watson, who's a phenomenal trainer with precocious types. So it's interesting to see how he's going to get on Dragon Symbol. I do think he deserves to be favourite. He's definitely the horse to beat in here. He's the only proper Group 1 contender. And he's got a perfect draw in gate 5. This horse showed so much early speed last time out at York in that better race than he's going to be running in here. As I say, he flattened out, but if he could sustain that effort, which last year he proved that he can over this kind of trip, then I think he's by far the horse to beat. You have to run to a mark of 110 to basically win this race if you look on the trends. And only 3 of the 11 runners in this year's field have ever run to 110. Dragon Symbol is obviously one of them. He's the head of the field. He's definitely the horse that I want to be with, Jess.
Yeah, I feel like they're giving him this option. He's got an entry in the King's Stand, the Platinum Jubilee, the July Cup later on in the season, all Group 1 races. Get the feeling, Tom, that they're giving him this option just to prove himself, prove that he is of that quality and beat this field and beat it well. He should do to even take up those chances at Ascot.
Yeah, 100%. They didn't really find much out last time in the Duke of York Clipper Logistics. I think Roger Varian kind of used that as a pipe opener, and this will be the proper test, whether we'll see the real Dragon Symbol that we saw all of last year, or whether he's just a bit regressive now he's entered his 4-year-old season. I hope that's not the case, because he was one of the leading lights last year. It was a joy to watch him on the racetrack every time he turned up. He had a real heavy campaign, which may play against him this season, but I just hope that's not the case. He's definitely the horse to beat. He's the Group 1 contender against unproven horses that are stepping up in grade. Dragon Symbol is a selection.
Okay, so Tom is keen on Dragon Symbol, has got confidence in this horse. James, I'll come to you next, because from a trainer's perspective, having a horse like this is quite frustrating, because he's got a clear amount of ability, which he showed this time last year, but he's kind of regressed slightly from those very good runs, and it's a tricky one as a trainer what you do with him. Where do you stand with Dragon Symbol?
Well, it's a strange one that he moved yard anyway, really, because I don't think Archie Watson did anything wrong with him. And it's going to be hard for Roger Varian to gauge what level he's actually at home in some ways, because Archie ran him a lot in the winter. He had 4 wins in a row, and then he went to the top grade. And why he didn't win at the top level, arguably he was first past the post at Royal Ascot. He just became a bit frustrating. And I just wonder at home, Roger Varian, as TC said, he's not renowned for out and out sprinters. He's more a lot of the big yards. They like Southern Furlong, Milers, and gaming towards the middle distances. So I just wonder if he needed that first run badly, or if the horse has become a little bit frustrating and perhaps stable switch hasn't rejuvenated him as such, and maybe it hasn't worked out. Now, opposition wise, he's dropping into a listed race. He's clearly the best, and even a repeat of a 5th or 6th in a King's Stand, etc., would see him win this race quite nicely. And the Achilles Stakes is a listed race. It's not a strong listed race either, but for what we saw at York, I can't go with him. So I'm going to take Dragon Symbol on and go elsewhere. And Clarendon House is a horse I like for Midland Park. My only worry is weather forecast. I would like it to dry out a little bit because he's got loads of form and firm ground at Bath. And when you handle the road at Bath, you generally want a sound surface. And who knows what Haydock will provide. I don't think we'll know until the first couple of races have been run. So that's the negative for Clarendon House, because I think it might be a little bit on the easy side at Longchamp. Russell beat him ahead at Goodwood on his return. He looked a little bit as though he'd come off at a run in the paddock. I felt that he just ran a little bit gassy in the early stages, and Russell would already had a run and getting the £5 was just race fit and ready. And out of 2 of them going forward, Clarendon House was the one I took out of it. Good soft ground at Longchamp. He ran well, stepped out to Quick Free Company, but I thought he was a horse that could well progress into this grade. And Dragon Symbol, look, he might well win quite easily, and we're not going to know anything new, but there's just question mark, stable switch, and he wasn't as good at York as what he was this time last year.
So 6-1 for Clarendon House, with rain forecasts is saying, James, you're never really certain whether they've done any watering at all. Obviously, they were racing there last week, but there was rain forecast today and meant to be dry and pretty warm as well over the next couple of days. So Clarendon House, the idea, well, basically the uncertainty whether Dragon Symbol is going to perform to the level that we know he can do. And Ross, I think that's what this whole race is sort of revolved around, is if he performs, Dragon Symbol will be very hard to beat, but he's just becoming a bit of an enigma, maybe having the C next to his name. A total not might time will tell with him. That could be a question mark if he doesn't reproduce his form. That's what I was sort of thinking. And I sort of agree with James that he just really needs to bounce right back for me to get too confident about his prospects.
Absolutely. I've got very little to add to anything that the three of you have said. I think the slightly slower ground certainly inconvenienced Clarendon House last time at Longchamp. I completely agree with TC that, Dragon Symbol probably hasn't got to run anywhere near his best to win this, but he has looked severely regressive. And my angle into this was exactly the same as James's. Roger Varian is shooting blind somewhat in that he doesn't know what a top form Dragon Symbol looks like. So he's only going to find out that he's got him right when he puts up a top-notch performance again. So Clarendon House was the one for me. Again, you've got to be a little bit concerned about the ground, as James said. He is the least exposed of all. He's only had 8 runs. I mean, Attigirl, who's a 3-year-old, has only had 7, but he's got plenty of progress still in him, and he looked very progressive up until that run at Longchamp. You might point to Robert Cowell's, I think he's 0 from 19 this month or in the last 14 days, but only 3 of those have come at odds of shorter than 10 to 1, and he's had a good few plays. So I'm not overly concerned with that, although you would like to see perhaps a few more wins. And then just yet another jockey in Kevin Stott. I'm not a huge fan of that sort of new jockeys each time. I do quite like to see partnerships remain intact, but I just thought at the prices, Dragon Symbol had to be taken on, and Clarendon House was probably the logical one.
Okay, another favour for Clarendon House, along with James. Ross is favouring him as well. James mentioned the form with Russell, a horse that was won at Goodwood when he beat Clarendon House. I thought it was a really nice performance in a handicap, and he showed like he definitely deserves to take a race like this. On at York last time. He was beaten comprehensively in the end by a horse that he was giving overstone to. And I think that was a very good performance, despite things just not going his way. He came from quite a long way back for James Doyle, and I think that effort could definitely be upgraded. And I'm very happy to take on Dragon Symbol as well, and with a horse that, considering he beat Clarendon House by a head, he's as it stands a much bigger price than him, 10 to 1. And I would be hopeful that he can give a really good account of himself in a race which is pretty competitive, as it always is, these sprint races. So Russell for me at 10-1, Dragon Symbol for TC, and Ross and James vote for Clarendon House. So that is the Achilles Stakes at 1:45 at Haydock on Saturday. We're going to move forward to the 2:55, the Pinnacle Stakes. And we've got a favourite in the shape of Sila Rossa making her seasonal reappearance at the age of 4. She's 5-2. Climate is 4-1 for Jessica Harrington, bringing her over. Noon Star 9-2, Lady Hayes 11-2, Delectable You 17-2, along with Now Quickly. Now, William Haggis won this race in 2019 with Classique. Sila Rossa, so consistent in handicaps, and then stepped up in class with ease in a listed race on her final start. And look, what can we say about William Haggis at the moment? Ross, I'll come to you first, because I think he's touching is turning to gold. I feel like the moment you say that, something might switch. But last weekend was a great emphasis of the type of horses he can train. A group one winner in the shape of the Classic winner over in Germany in the Innies success, and obviously Alenka as well. He can just sort of train them all. And Sila Rossa looks like she could potentially be even better than this, but she does need to be race fit against a few of them that hold that race fitness edge.
Yeah, that's probably the only hole in her, isn't it? She'd be shorter still, I think, if she had a previous race. But I just thought she was a standout in this. She's been very progressive. Her only disappointing run, and she was still Group 3 placed, was in the Princess Royal Stakes at Newmarket, and they perhaps in hindsight would have wanted to have made more use of her. They rode her with a bit more restraint on that occasion, and perhaps didn't suit her. She'll stay this trip really well. As you pointed out, William Haggis 41% the last time I looked. He's absolutely flying along. Tom Marcondo will of course be riding everything with confidence, because you do when you know the yard is going so well. And I just thought that the two obvious ones against her, Noon Star, despite her pedigree out of midday, still looks like she perhaps is a bit keen for the 12 furlongs and is better at 10 at the moment. And Climate has got to step up. You know, she's looked a bit exposed at the 2 tries at 10 furlongs in Group 2s for fillies. Extra distance might suit her, but I'm not so sure. I just thought Sila Rossa looked absolutely the stone hardened logical choice.
Yeah, Noon Star, I was disappointed with that run after winning so well at York. But they're funny, these fillies. You know horses. You breed horses. They can throw bad performances, and you can't forgive them for it, because they have sort of minds of their own, especially as they get older.
Yeah, she looks like she's getting more buzzy with racing, though. That's the concern for me. She doesn't look like she's learning to settle. She looks like she's almost getting more energized about her racing, more adrenaline coming through her, and that's making her harder to settle, not easier to settle. Pedigree, Galileo out of midday, you would say would be a 12 furlong horse all day long, and she just doesn't look like she's yet learned to race in a manner that's going to see her get that trip well enough. Whereas Sila Rossa absolutely will, and I think they'll ride with that in mind, and I think it'll make her very hard to beat.
Yeah, sure. So Sila Rossa 5-2 for Ross. Tom, I looked through this race, and I love seeing Dennis Coakley with a nice horse. Now Quickly is in there. His last major winner, according to big race wins that you can find on the Racing Post, was in the Pinnacle Stakes in 2015 with Miss Marjorie. So he knows how to find fillies like this. She's quite a big price. She's, you'd imagine if she was with the likes of William Haggis going through the handicap ranks quite progressively. Yes, she's rated a lot lower than Sila Rossa, but it is sometimes a case of put them with a different bunch of connections and they'd be a shorter price. Why would Now Quickly not strike as a horse that could be at a level closer to Sila Rossa, even though she's 17-2?
Well, you touched on probably the main angle, which is the connections. Dennis Coakley is not known for his group winners. As you say, won this race before, but Now Quickly also has to improve again. Now, that's all she did last year. She was winning race after race, finishing second on one occasion. She's taken big steps forward, but she's still a good £7 below Sila Rossa on official ratings, and she's coming off a layoff like Sila Rossa is. I think she probably deserves to be around 7-1 rather than 10s or a double figure price. But still, she has to take that step forward. Actually, I'm with Sila Rossa like Ross, but it's mainly just due to a process of elimination. I mean, Noon Star, I was very disappointed about last time. She seems to be a bit of a just a disappointment in general, not living up to the hype of her amazing pedigree. Climate is only a maiden winner. That's the only success she's got to her name. Lady Hayes is a very good filly, but she's just struggled to get wins on the board, and she needs soft ground. They were actually going to send her over to America at one point, but obviously that would be a stupid decision given she needs give underfoot, and they've realised that now, and that she stayed over here. Now, quickly, as we've touched on, needs to improve again from her handicap wins, now stepping up to a Group 3. Invite disappointing 2 runs this year, and then the other 4 just have no chance on official ratings. So it should be a process of elimination for Sila Rosa. She's also a 4-year-old. 4-year-olds have won 6 of the last 9 editions of this race. William Haggas 41% in the last fortnight, as Ross said, and she's just got a beautiful pedigree. Also, that Lingfield victory last time out was one of the most sparkling victories I've seen from a filly at the track. Maybe it was the step up to mile 5 that suited, or just the track's topography. Maybe that suited Sila Rosa. But she scooted clearing the straight. She looked like a completely different horse. And whether that was the trip or the track, I think it's mainly the trip. In fact, I think she stayed every yard of that. She's only going to take another step forward this year. Providing she's fit, I think she's by far the horse to beat again.
Also worth pointing out, and James, I'll get your thoughts on this, on getting horses fit and ready to run their first go. After 162 days off the track, from going from a 2 to a 3-year-old, she won easily. Yes, it was a novice event at Chepstow last year, but that's it's no mean doing, especially for fillies, especially as they get older. Sometimes do just tend to need it.
Possibly. The horses that William Haggas has got, though, he's got so many top class individuals that she would have done some quite serious bits of work with some high class individuals. It would be harder for Dennis Coakley, on the other hand, because she's his best horse, and whatever he works out with, it's quite likely, I'd imagine, that she works all over the opposition. Whereas William Haggas can put 100 horses next to Sila Rosa and then get an exact guide as to how her fitness is at Newmarket in particular. I'm sticking with Noon Star. Again, what the guys are saying, I was disappointed at Nottingham, to be honest. I thought she scrambled home to beat Technique and didn't build in it at York. Climate at Dahlia wasn't a strong Dahlia at all this time around. And Lady Hayes has to be led to the start. She's a tricky Kodiak filly, and she surprised me by how well she ran at Goodwood last time. But she's vulnerable. And Nell Quickly, I think you make a good point, to be honest, Jess. She is too big a price, bearing in mind both her and Sila Rosa were rated 84 back in August. And Nell Quickly won her last 2 starts, and Sila Rosa just happened to go up in grade and actually got beaten in a handicap off 85 at York. So then probably not as much between them as the prices suggest, but I think the fact that William Haggas at 41% strike rates, loads of seconds as well, not like there's only winners coming in, they've all run in exceptional races. I think she's probably improved plenty from 3 to 4, so she's a selection, but it's a race where, as TC says, there's more question marks against her rivals and really strong confidence behind her.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think when there are lots of question marks against the others, a horse that doesn't have question marks is Now Quickly. And I want to give a good word for her, just because she hasn't done that much wrong. But yes, she might need it maybe a little bit more than Sila Rosa, as James has quite rightly put. The one that I'm going to just put more faith into than James suggests is Lady Hayes. Yes, she looks a bit tricky, but I think the best form in the book from looking at her races, yes, it was quite a while ago, but I think there could be some excuses from her latter races where she might have just been found out a little bit of the trip and in class when she was behind Ashada. But her second behind Alpinista is Lady Hayes in the Lancashire Oaks last year. Alpinista obviously gone on to be a multiple Group 1 winner, and I wouldn't take that lightly at all. Yes, she got plenty of weight from that filly, but that was a really good run, and I thought was very encouraged by her second at Goodwood at the end of April. I think she can come on for it. And Ray Dawson, when he's up on Roger Varian's horses and he's getting lots of opportunities with him, he's got a really good strike rate. So I'm quietly hopeful that she's going to put in a good performance at 11-2. I'll take on James and Tom and Ross, who are all confident that Sila Rosa is going to get a winning reappearance at 5-2. Okay, we'll head into Beverley. This is the 2-year-old trophy, a condition stakes at 3:15, £40,000 on offer. And we have 8 runners, which is incredibly disappointing. But I suppose it's only because we've got so much racing on Saturday that there are countless amount of options for these horses. Plenty probably thought they should go elsewhere and that this would be competitive, or they're waiting for something else. But it is a weak lineup, and actually there isn't more than 16 runners across the country this weekend, and that's just another emphasis on too much racing. But that's another topic for another day. We've got Whistle Blue, who's 7-4 favourite for this, for Eve Johnson Horton, Charlie Bishop. Rogue Spirit's 9-2, along with Chateau. JM Jungle 6-1. The Riddler 15-2. On Your Dreams 12-1. Chattel Village is 14-1, and Corporate Raider 20-1. Ross, you write a very popular juveniles to watch column, and he's been hiding this slightly from us. I've seen it because it's very much incorporated with racing TV. But you say that you love your jumps racing, but we know that you specialise in these 2-year-olds. So where do you stand on this field, and we've got to look forward to in this pretty prestigious race?
Well, Eve Johnson Houghton has done very well in the last couple of seasons with her 2-year-old. She had Chipotle in the same colours last year, relatively inexpensively bought. Whistling Flute certainly couldn't put you off him, but he's just at a short price. And there just happens to be one that went into my winners in waiting piece for Racing TV in this. Corporate Raider made his debut only last week at Catterick, jumped really smartly and looked like he was running a promising race, and then just sort of fell apart after a furlong and looked thoroughly outpaced, and then absolutely flew home under very, very tender handling from Paul Mulrennan. The pedigree is certainly leaning towards 6, 7, even a mile. But Beverley is a stiff finish. He's drawn out fairly wide, so he's not going to jump and go forward. You see plenty of 2-year-old races change dramatically in the last furlong, even half furlong at Beverley. I think there's plenty of pace on in this, and the way he came home gives me some hope this stiff 5 would suit. And I just think it's interesting that they've gone again just a week later to sort of aim for this pot rather than just a regular maiden or a novice. So at a big price, he's interesting to me. But Whistling Flute has certainly looked smart, even in defeat. I think the horseman who born in Balkeel that beat him last time is a decent one. There was a good gap back to the third, so I wouldn't put anyone off the favourite. But I thought a big price in these 2-year-old races where it's very difficult to assume they're just going to back up a run. I thought Corporate Raider had plenty of promising signs in that run at Catterick, so I'll go with him.
Yeah, 20-1 for Corporate Raider. And he definitely, he said in the notes, he was a real eye catcher. I remember watching the race and thinking he was an intriguing sort. So come on from it. So one to note from Ross anyway, and good to see him in here. And with the 8 runners, it's an idea. He's an ideal each way bet in a race like this, I suppose. Tom, on to you next. And thoughts on this race, how it's shaped up. As I said, I was hoping that we'd have more runners to choose from and a little bit more to work with, but we are where we are. What have you been most impressed with from sort of debut or first or second runs?
Yeah, it's an intriguing race, as you say, not the numbers we want. There's no runners from the Cool Silk Partnership, which is the biggest surprise of all, given this is one of the races they target with their 2-year-olds. But there are still some promising sorts in here. Rogue Spirit's the likely leader from gate 2. He was impressive first time up at Beverley at this track, so he's got course form, which is crucial here. But he seemed to weaken late on, and that was just enough to put me off. Don't get me wrong, I think he's going to be right there in the firing line at the finish. But I'm just not 100% sure he's got the stamina to live with these equally fast horses. Obviously, that maiden first time up was a weaker race than this. You need to be drawn low, basically, to win this race. You need to race towards that that far side rail. Otherwise, you've got a very slim chance. If you get lost in the middle of the course, it's so difficult to make up ground. And I'm picking a horse called JM Jungle, who's drawn in stall 1, should get the perfect toe into the race behind the aforementioned Rogue Spirit. JM Jungle was by Bungle in the Jungle, who won this race in 2012, and also sired Jungle in the Bungle, who won this race in 2018. So he's bred for the job. John Quinn targeted a very rich race at Hamilton in the Sunday Series last time with this horse, and he scooted up the near side rail after getting trouble in running. The runner-up from that race is subsequently won by 5 1/4 lengths, giving the form a huge boost. I think at around 6-1, JM Jungle's the play.
Okay, so JM Jungle 6-1 for Tom. James, well, as we're saying, need to look through bits and pieces of form that we've got. Potential. Ross has got an eye-catching horse that's ran well up to a level on his debut performance. You've got horses coming in just off the back of one run, and those winners have got to give it just a little bit more away. Well, how do you figure out it at this stage of the year? Like, and we'll get to Royal Ascot soon, where we're looking at sort of those newcomer winners and working out, who's the best of a bunch where there's so much limited amount of form to go on?
Yeah, there's a lot of guesswork in how much horses are going to improve or regress. Some do, and how much strength and depth there were to the races. Whistle and Flute definitely deserves to be favourite. The Bath race, I don't think it was a particularly great race. We had a runner in the contest, but he quick and clear quite nice, and he ran an absolute stormer at Ascot, and he was well backed at Ascot. He was 13-8 favourite. Store 5, he could be a little bit on the wing, the son of Dandy Man, but he had a nice Shield winner in these colours, Blatant at Leicester on Monday. So the team are in form, but he's skinny enough. So I'm going to take him on with Rogue Spirit. What's interesting is that he's been gelded since he won at Beverley, 26 days ago, which was a pretty quick return. The young you geld him, the quicker they do recover from it, but he was pretty badly behaved in the preliminaries. He was heavily backed, but was weak in the market on the run to the off because of his behaviour beforehand. And the fact he went on and won, he probably tired because he wasted a bit of his energy messing about, and they were very positive about him. Clearly there's physical issues or something wrong with him, because the stud fee when the mare was covered was €85,000. You only made £11,000 at the sales. So you've got that slight negative, but Tom Clover team have really talked him up before he ran on debut, and then he got the job done despite being a little bit tricky. So there might be a lot of improvement, and he's got that Beverley form. Because TC, I agree about Chateau. I loved him on debut actually at Salisbury. He was very professional in the paddock. He was just a little bit too relaxed and not quite sharp enough. And while he will win a lot of some nice races, I think 6 will probably see him in a better light, and he might just be caught out by some really, really sharp 2-year-olds early doors, because that Remarkable Force boosted the form and winning at Musselburgh for Ammo Racing. So I like this race. It's a competitive race. Yes, it may be a shame we've only got the 8, but with Beverley, the more runners you have, the more the draw rules horses out. So I can see why some people haven't taken a chance as such in this race. And Rogue Spirit is the one for me.
Okay, Rogue Spirit is 9-2, actually same price as it stands with Chateau, the horse that I think everyone's quite intrigued by Andrew Balding's team. And we Corporate Raider, the other big outsider for Ross, at 20-1. Everyone's in a nice enough word for Whistle and Flute at 7-4, and he's going to be my selection. He was very precocious, obviously winning his first race at Bath, bolted up really, and even if it was weak, he just had to do what was necessary of him. I think he bumped into potentially Andrew Balding's best 2-year-old in Bakil, who I really, really like when he won at Ascot, and I think that he could go on and do better things. And the horse that was third that day, Fragrance, is on and frank that form. And I liked that he sort of kept up his task in a race that probably will work out quite well in the future. He obviously is favourite at 7-4, but as the guy was saying, deserves to be. And coming out of stall 5 might not be ideal then, from what Tom's saying, but he should have a really good account of himself, and he's clearly been ready since early doors, as he was one of the first 2-year-olds to run and win. So Whistle and Flute for me at 7-4. So that's it. We've had a look at 3 races on a very, very busy Saturday. We're going to look at our naps and next best. But before we get there, I'm going to let you know that next week we've obviously got a lot going on, because we will have the Coronation Cup, the Oaks and the Derby, the feature races on the Platinum Jubilee weekend. And we're going to have a full Epsom previews on this podcast. But we've also got plenty going on the YouTube channel. So please subscribe. And as I said, plenty of content coming on the YouTube channel for SBK. So that will be something not to miss after this weekend. So hopefully we'll give you something to enjoy this over the course of this Saturday before we get there. So we'll, as mentioned at the top of this show, we've had some successful naps, and that's where we're going to go to next. Some naps and next best. We can go anywhere you want on Saturday. There's so much to look through. So Tom Collins, where have you gone?
Yeah, well, the nap, I'm going to stick to a race we've already covered, and that's Dragon Symbol in the 145 at Haydock, the Achilles Stakes. Now, I'm taking a risk. Obviously, last time out, he wasn't anywhere near his best. I just think he's going to bounce back. I'm happy to forgive a horse one run, no matter what the situation. He showed enough speed that day for me to want to plunge into him. And he's a reasonable price as well against completely inferior opposition. And the next best is Liverpool Knight in the 310 at Chester. Intriguing race this. Obviously, Chester's some punters' favourite tracks. many punters don't like it at all. The draw plays a big part in this. There are 3 real informed horses in this race. Old Port, who's been a winner for this podcast before, and then the hat-trick seeking pair Heart of Soul and Spirit Mixer. The latter's definitely a major player for Andrew Baldwin, who's got a good record at Chester. But I like this Liverpool Knight. He had 6 runs for John Gosden early in his career and then was sold on for 45,000 to Alan King. Alan King won a real nice all-weather handicap with him. Good for the grade, obviously, in context. And he bolted up that day before 4 1/4 lengths. And then I think they just ran him a bit too quick on the 11th of November, just 10 days after his victory. And he finished 3rd. He made his move wide on the bend at Chelmsford, just not ideal. And it was also a pretty good race for the grade. Now he's moved to Kevin Philippart de Foy's, which I think is a real intriguing move. One of the young, shrewd trainers in the game. He's drawn in gate 1. I think Martin Harley will sit in around mid-division, try to skim the rail throughout and hopefully beat the likes of Spirit Mixer and Heart of Soul.
We'll head to James next for your Napa next best.
Yeah, so now I'm going to stick with Road Spirit into your race at Beverley. I'll say interesting that he's been gelded since he made a winning debut. I know he's highly regarded at Tom Clover's. I'm going to stick at Beverley for the race thereafter, the 350. And this one is Nikki for Jed O'Keefe and Jack Garrity. And Nathaniel Philly, she ran in the Lingford Oaks trial where Rogue Millennium, who we gave a good shout to, won that race for Tom Clover and the same owners as Rogue Spirit. Too much for her stepping up to this company on that occasion, but she looked quite progressive previously. She won her maiden at Lingfield in September and was a good second on her return at Newcastle. So I think in a race which lacks a bit of strength and depth, some quite exposed 3-year-olds for the time of year, Nikki is the next best on what's a very busy Saturday, but it's a tricky Saturday. Nothing particularly stood out for me. So hopefully those 2 can get on the board.
Yeah, I agree. It is a very tricky Saturday afternoon indeed. Okay, thanks to James. And Ross, finally to you.
So the nap comes in the 440 at Haydock, vintage choice. Went into my notebook after a good debut 3rd, and then Julie did win next time, but was truthfully a bit disappointed how much hard work he made of it. Was then a good run in 3rd time out, being an 87 rated horse, giving them £7. He's been gelded since, which is a good thing because he is a slightly nervous, edgy sort. Looking back now, that debut run was very smart. He was behind Huya Mill, 105, and Dawn of Liberation, 107. So a mark of 87 here should be more than workable. And then the next best comes in the 205 at Beverley, Richard Handtrain, Distinguished Lady. She didn't get home over 6 furlongs at Newmarket behind a pretty impressive performer of Godolphins. And she was hassled. She was never really relaxed through that. Drops back to 5 furlongs here, nicely drawn in stall 1, as TC's mentioned earlier. By Zoostar, who's doing great things down in Australia. It's yet to really hit the ground here, but they're well thought of. They've made good prices at the earning sales, and I think she can show the benefit of dropping back in trip and from that nice draw.
Okay, well, thanks to Ross. I'm pleased to say, well, last week it was a bit of fun, us taking each other on in these naps and next best, but we're all going different places, which makes it a little bit more interesting, I suppose, something for everyone. For myself, my nap is going to be Happy Power in the 330 at Haydock, which is the John of Gaunt Stakes, the Group 3. He's got to beat the last year's winner Kinross, but he's got really good form from this season on his side. He's race fit. He was a good winner. Yes, it was a 3-runner race that last time, but he couldn't have done it more impressively, and he beat a good Godolphin sort in doing so. And David Probert back on board, who's been going on really well with him since he's taken over the reins from Sylvester de Souza. The King Power Racing split happened, and I think they've got this horse in really good order. I think in a race which won't necessarily take a huge amount of winning, he's a really good option, and against the favourite Kinross, who needs to come back and win on a seasonal reappearance after a long time off the track. Next best is going to be at Chester as well in the 345. I was really pleased by Paul's rush in and his performance in his first start for Hugo Palmer, and he did a lot of good work early on in, I think it was a better race than this race that he's got to run in on Saturday. He led from the start. He showed a lot of good speed. He's drawn well for Chester this time around. He's got Stevie Donahue on board, who's riding out of his skin at the moment. Bit of resurgence. He's had 3 wins from his last 8 rides, including in the German 2,000 guineas on Maljoom, and he takes the ride aboard Fools Rush In for Hugo Palmer. So those are my two selections. As always, new SBK customers will get £30 in free bets by depositing £10. T's and C's do apply. That's a look at what is going to be a very busy Saturday this weekend. We'll be back, as I said, with a good preview of the Epsom Derby and Oaks next week. So lots to look forward to. I'm sure we'll be thinking much about our SBK ambassador, Richard Kingscote, ahead of a huge weekend for him on Desert Crown. So we hope that you can join us then. But good luck and enjoy this weekend. Thanks to James, to Ross and to Tom as always.